people are throwing around the word fascism. Good start. I almost just tripped over the whole foundational word of this talk. But people talk about fascism and accuse people of being fascists. Now, let me preface this or preface this, as some would say, some of my friends would say, let me preface this. Ryan, shout out to you. A general rule on this program, a general rule in my life, and something I tell people all the time, is that you lose an argument the minute you start to compare things to Nazi Germany. You lose an argument the minute you start to compare things to the Holocaust, because what it does is it demeans that moment in history. And I say this all the time, where no matter how bad whatever the hell you think is going on in America, don't you dare compare it to the Holocaust. Don't you dare compare it to Nazi Germany, because you cannot get worse, right? Like, you cannot get worse than the worst time in human history. I actually had a commenter, I was explaining this to them, and I was explaining that, hey, look, you get 0 points because you are comparing California to Auschwitz, and you have to go. And they responded with something like, so you're telling me that the Holocaust was worse than, I can't remember what they gave me now, but it was something to do with like in the last 10 years. And it was something that was not that big of a deal. And so I think people do get a little confused. But fascism is the new Nazi Germany, right? Well, it's the same thing, obviously. But people are now saying we live in a fascist state. We live in a oppressive fascist government with a tyrant dictator. Now, look, again, I have to preface this. I don't like Trump. Don't like Trump at all. Do not like him whatsoever. I'm not a Trump supporter. I'm not a card-carrying MAGA member. I roll my eyes. Every time I see a Trump flag or a MAGA hat or whatever. So do not get this misconstrued. Do not get this twisted, ladies and gentlemen. I'm certainly not supporting anyone. I'm certainly not telling you Trump's a good guy. Okay? But the idea that we are in a fascist, authoritarian, totalitarianism, and the thought that we are there is downright laughable. So what I'm going to do is, one time and one time only, I'm going to put this to bed. And I'm going to explain to you what fascism is and why we aren't in it. Bottom line. Now, you may say, okay, well, let's start with, are we in a fascist situation? The only part that anyone could misconstrue with any element of fascism is the idea that a fascist government usually relies on a charismatic, cult-like figure leader. Trump certainly does fit that mold of a charismatic cult of personality leader who people love. But Obama fit that as well. People loved Obama. He was very charismatic, cult-like. People really, really, really supported him. People had shirts and signs and whatever. That does not make either one a fascist. Okay, that is not enough. That is not enough to say, oh, this guy is charismatic. Oh, this guy has a legion of adoring fans. That must mean he's a fascist. No, not the case. So where did fascism begin? Where can we even start? Now, first of all, guys, name another podcast that starts off with, we're talking about Stranger Things. We're talking about, and then we lead into me explaining fascism. No script, no editing. I really am on a whole other level. So where did fascism start? Fascism started with Mussolini. So Mussolini, he was the birther, I guess you can, of fascism. And it led into Nazi Germany, right? Hitler was an enormous fan of Mussolini. Hitler was, I don't want to generalize this, but Hitler molded his reign after Mussolini. Mussolini was in power, I believe, 11 years or so. Again, guys, I'm not really super up to date on my, dictator history here, but I think he was in there for like 11 years, somewhere in there, before Hitler did his thing. So now fascism is born out of strife. Usually what happens is people are, like something like the Great Depression happens, and people are vulnerable. A cult of personality like leader then tells them, if we do this, and we love the country and we fight for the country, we can get back to where we were. We're down now. We have to do these things to get back to our greatness. And usually what it makes people do is it eliminates their choice, so you wouldn't be a Republican or a Democrat. You would just be for the nation, for the country, for whatever this cult-like leader is advocating for. And he'll tell you, or he or she, I guess, will tell you, do these things, and we're going to get back to a perfect state. Now, then you roll into things like racism and ethnic cleansing. Mussolini and Hitler were both big on a quote-unquote perfect race, whether it's for a perfect German race or whatever. And you do see this like ethnic cleansing, or a lot of the times they will eliminate handicapped people or the elderly or people they don't deem worthy of their new state. Okay. So far, does this sound like America at all? No, it does not. A lot of the times, fascism, obviously incites violence. Actually, violence is one of the biggest proponents, or one of the biggest elements of fascism, where you will see tremendous violence. And violence is not only used, but advocated to force these beliefs. Something else you will see a lot is it will destroy truth. And it won't lie. This is another big part of fascism. They will not lie to you, but they will replace what is true. And I'll let you stew on that and think about that for a while. But they want to, instead of telling you something that's not true, they want to warp your brain and detach you from reality enough to where what they are telling you is the truth and is correct. That's another big distinction. So they eliminate choice. They have to. They eliminate parties. They eliminate, differing ideals. They eliminate opposition, and they put everyone on a very linear path to their beliefs. So when you think about it, they eliminate your freedom and replace it with an unbridled enthusiasm for their beliefs. All right. Now, this kind of stuff, they also do not, obviously democracy is not a part of this, right? Like voting, like protest, that's not a part of this. They don't want that. Liberty of expression, liberties of party is a sham. Fascism organizes people under state power, so state governance, stuff like that. Now, here's their belief is that you'd actually be freer. You'd be freer because you wouldn't have any consciousness towards anything. You would just worship them and worship the nation. That would just be it, right? So that's how they kind of advocated for it in their mind. So I don't have to really go much further. Okay, I don't have to go much further to explain to you why this is not a thing, why America is not in a fascist place. Now, let me also caveat this by saying that fascism, the Axis powers, when they were destroyed, you could argue that, okay, that destroyed fascism. But fascism is an ideal, right? So there are certainly people who do believe in fascism right now, right? I mean, and I'm talking about in America. There's groups that do have these fascist ideals. There are radical groups everywhere. Fascism will never be eliminated. Just like racism will never be eliminated, even if it's not the majority. There are still people who get warped and get messed up and fall into these traps. History is a circle, ladies and gentlemen. History is a circle. It happens. It repeats itself, and it will forever. We'll always deal with this kind of shit. And the best we can do is prepare ourselves to deal with it and know what we're looking for, right? To know what we are looking for to stop the rise of the next Hitler or whatever it is. There's a big difference between not liking someone or being opposed to someone and them being an authoritarian dictator. I think that and again, I don't want to get into all this shit with like policy, and I don't want to get into the nitty gritty of the political spectrum. I don't care. All right. That ain't what this podcast is for. I've told y'all before, this is not a political podcast. I'm not an uber political person, more of a social commentator, and this is part of that. This whole fascist racist, these kind of allegations, to me, all that does is it ruins the chances of us being able to defend against the next fascist or the next racist. If everyone is a fascist, no one's a fascist, right? If everyone is racist, no one is racist. If you're calling, if you're calling everyone a homophobe, how the hell are you going to distinguish between who actually is a homophobe and who isn't, right? So it's an easy buzzword to throw around. Trump's a fascist, Trump's a racist, whatever. I would do it lightly, ladies and gentlemen. I would try and stop yourself from doing that. I would try and eliminate any of that moving forward. I don't want to say it's a sickness, but I do think it's close. I think it's really bad. I think it's really dangerous. Again, all we advocate for here is education. All I advocate for here is critical thinking. That's all I'm interested in. I don't care if you vote right or left. I don't care if you write in whoever on your ballot, The Rock. But educate yourself first. Give me a reason why. That's all. That's all I want. So don't fall into this trap of he's a fascist, he's a racist, he's a homophobe, because if you do that, you're going to blind yourself to the actual fascists, the actual homophobes, and the actual racists. It is kind of bad. It's the same thing as the Holocaust thing. And I think it makes sense, or it should make sense, why comparing things to the Holocaust and to Nazi Germany, if it's not worthy of being compared, if that's not worthy, then it's a really bad deal. And it can really harm the future of our country and the future of our nation, because it will allow us to repeat history.